We have adjourned from our executive session, and I am going to open the regular meeting of the governing board for our April 28th, 2021 regular meeting of the governing board. Mrs. Nye, could you please do our roll call?
Mark Monston.
Here.
Jason Pollock.
Here.
Laura Burr.
Here.
Lindsay Love.
Here.
Joel Work.
Here.
Thank you. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We'll get started with some of our routine business. Our first is to approve the minutes of the April 14th, 2021 regular board meeting and the April 21st, 2021 special board meeting. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the April 14th, 2021 regular board meeting and the April 21st, 2021 special board meeting as presented.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Our next is to approve and ratify our payroll and accounts payable vouchers. May I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve and ratify payroll and accounts payable vouchers.
Second.
All those in favor of ratifying payroll and accounts payable vouchers, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Dr. Castile, do we have any correspondence?
None this evening, Madam President.
Thank you. Well, tonight we have two presentations by two of our student council presidents, one from ACP Erie and one from Basha High. So Ava Berry from ACP Erie, would you please come up and to the microphone and let us know what's going on at ACP?
Yes, ma'am. All right, so can you guys hear me okay? All right, just want to make sure. All right, so first of all, good evening to all of our amazing board members. My name is Ava Berry, if you don't already know me, and I'm the student body president of ACP Erie. I'd like to start off by sincerely saying thank you all so much for your flexibility and understanding throughout this unique year. It's obvious that your greatest concern has been offering the most safe and balanced school year for all kids in CUSD, so thank you again. I'm greatly honored to be here and to speak with you all tonight and represent the Knights. To begin, I'd love to highlight my amazing council. Between getting a brand new advisor, brand new executive team, and of course the happenings of COVID, adjusting has nonetheless been difficult. Yet I'm beyond impressed by my peers' abilities to adapt to the circumstances and have the absolute best year possible. I did have some photos prepared, but unfortunately that did not work out, so I'm just going to quickly thank my advisor, Andy Giberson, as well as my administrative team, who's made it a priority to work very closely with Stugo all year. Next, I want to touch on the success of a couple of our COVID-friendly events that we had this year that these awesome people worked on. First, we were unable to have our traditional version of our yearly male pageant, which was Mr. ACP. We quickly adapted and turned it into an entertaining YouTube series that students across campus adored. In the final episodes, the students got to vote for their fan favorite based on their talent, interview, and overall presence in the episode. And this was super fun for everyone on campus, and we got really good feedback from that. And it also supported our COVID plan as well. We also adapted to the absence of homecoming by having a homecoming lunch. So this was a huge hit with our students, as everyone got to dress up and take photos and listen to music with their friends at an extended lunch period. And it may not have been a traditional homecoming, but it was a huge hit. We had really good feedback from that as well. Additionally, our council decided to invest in an app called Goose Chase. This is essentially a digital version of a scavenger hunt that hundreds of students can participate in at once. We had put these together every quarter when we noticed student morale was going down, and we found that it really brought students and all types of teachers and all friend groups closer together. Currently, the seniors in Stugo are working on first ever senior week from May 10th to the 14th, so this is an upcoming event actually. Within this week, we will have senior focused spirit days that were decided on as a class to make sure we included everybody. We also have several mini events planned throughout the week, such as coffee and donuts, a senior sunset, senior prank day, etc. And then on Friday at the end of the week, we'll be hosting a senior festival in replacement of our prom, and our senior class is super excited to end the year off strong with that. And on that note, I'd like to highlight my class of 2021 and do a quick rundown of our senior week. Because as summer progressed, we knew that our chances of getting back to school for first quarter was growing slimmer and slimmer, so we had to adapt, of course. And then this did not discourage this group of students at all. It actually, I found, inspired more creative ideas. We actually made a video virtually over the summer break. And we kickstarted this year with the class motto, "The best is yet to come," fitting the positive mindset I know we were all holding as the year comes to the close. And we didn't get to start off with our General Spirit Week. However, our students collaborated and made an awesome film to show us all and introduce ourselves and our vision for the school year. And as we were delivered the exciting news that we could finally go back, we prepared lots of retro-themed decor and welcomed the kids back in with a clap in. Then, after the first week, it wasn't long until our sports teams got to kick off their seasons. And we did really well in a lot of our sports this year. Our football team had an eventful run with 65 all-region player awards and a varsity team GPA of 4.01. 15 of our players also received college offers this year, and by the end of the season, the boys fought to earn 3A Metro East Region state champions. Our varsity girls volleyball also swept this year and won several team academic awards. Our track and field team, along with cross country, also proved their strength by beating several personal and school records. Kellen Gibson, one of our varsity wrestlers, also won state champion for his weight class, and our boys volleyball is currently having an amazing season as they are 4th in state right now. And I could go on and on about our sports accomplishments, but our players prove how well-rounded our campus truly is. Not only are we exceeding in athletics, but we also started several clubs around campus with almost over 65 clubs that students could choose from. Currently, our environmental club is working on planting a school garden to promote environmental awareness. And although COVID restrictions have compromised our student section, the students who are able to attend are filled with spirit and not afraid to show off their night pride. Our spirit committee, we refer to as Nightmare, has done an amazing job at hyping up our teams and clubs by decorating every single event and making gift bags for each team by the end of their season. And they also work hard to make Spirit Weeks extra special because we have limited events, obviously. And then within Stugo, one of our most spirited members, his name is Kayson Martinez. He did run for ASC state president. And he did make it to the final round. And unfortunately, he did not win the final title, but this was a huge victory since we go to such a small school to be recognized by such a large organization. And we also won a Council of Distinction Award for our extended service and activities hosted around campus. And before I end it off, I would love to express our student body's excitement towards a new campus. As you all know, we are all extremely grateful for this opportunity to expand our ACP family and to have the facilities to improve upon every aspect of our school. With hundreds of extremely smart and talented kids, I'm positive that the upcoming classes are going to make the absolute best out of it. And we are currently already making spirit posters and all of that for a very spirited kickoff that I believe you will all be very pleased with. Overall, ACP is an amazing community that I've been so blessed to be a part of the past 6 years, and it is such an honor to work with you all this year and to be able to speak with you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ava. Before you go and sit down, this is your last time with us, and so what are your plans for after graduation?
Well, actually, it's funny that you brought that up. Today, I did pay my enrollment fee to go to University of Arizona, and I will be, yes, bear down, and I will be studying neuroscience as of now. That might change because that sounds like hard, but hopefully, that's what my hopes are. So.
Well, with all your enthusiasm and all of the leadership that you've shown, I am sure that you can handle hard.
Hopefully, we'll see.
But to kind of wish you on your future endeavors, we have had a little desk plaque made with your name on
that's
it.
so cute.
And so hopefully you can be famous as a scientist in the future, and you can put this on your desk.
Yes, I'll give you all a big shout out. Thank you, guys.
Our next student is Reed Ulick from Basha High School.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm very excited to be back here with you tonight for one final time to share with you all what Basha student government has been able to accomplish since I last spoke and how we're planning on finishing out the year strong and not letting our morale get down as we near the end of this rather tumultuous year. So what have we as a Basha student government accomplished since I last spoke? Last time I spoke, we were currently in the process of designing exclusive class of 2021 senior merch, which has been dealt with by our senior class. They've done an excellent job promoting these through our bookstore, selling them on campus, and using them as a token of appreciation to our senior class of 2021, bringing our senior class of 2021 a special gift and bringing us all together. So it's a very high quality, nice design that we wanted to really put a lot of extra money and time and make sure that we gave our senior class something that they could truly appreciate and take away from Basha as the year came to a close. So we're currently selling these at our bookstore right now, and they've been a huge hit across our campus. Just as we had done with our winter sports, now that we're into the spring sports season, our sports coordinator, Jaden Ocampo, has been doing an absolutely amazing job coordinating with different sports across our campus and setting up things such as senior nights for them, so where our student government is making posters for each of the individual athletes on our campus, as well as balloon stanchions, and making each senior night for every sport on our campus a very special night for those athletes. We've also been doing an excellent job promoting the games that we are able to attend on our campus and getting a student section out to those games and making sure that we're remaining COVID safe with those, as well as celebrating any team achievement over our morning announcements across our campus, just to give the teams the recognition that they deserve throughout our spring sports. And the biggest thing we've been focusing on is not just the big ticket name sports that everybody knows, but also the smaller sports on our campus, such as girls tennis, or track and field, sports that don't typically get the kind of notoriety on our campus. And that's been a big focus throughout the years, promoting all sports across our campus and not just those smaller ones. So senior merch and spring sports have been excellent since I last spoke. But what I really want to talk about is our last week and what we were able to do last week. We started last week off with our April Spirit Week, which happened to be movie themed. As always, Spirit Weeks are an excellent way for us to bring our student population together, to get people excited to dress up going to school and see people go all out on our campus and show their Basha spirit. It was a huge hit, as always, excellent participation, especially for the month of April, which typically students tend to become less engaged. We actually saw more engagement in this Spirit Week, which is a great trend to see, as our whole goal is to make this fourth quarter the most energized and excited we've ever had. And so with that, we had our first ever of the year and first in the district in-person assembly, which, to go along with our movie-themed Spirit Week, happened to be an Oscar-themed assembly. Now, to say that planning this assembly was a challenge would be an understatement. We wanted it to be a traditional assembly that everybody knew and loved, and so we could give our seniors one final assembly, but also welcome in our class of 2025 freshmen to their first ever Basha assembly. But it forced us to completely reimagine what a school assembly actually looked like. And so after tons of planning, tons of creativity, we ended up hosting our first ever assembly on our Basha football field. Like I said, it was Oscars themed, and so it was really great to see us spread out on our football field and also be able to come together as a Basha community and to give our seniors one final assembly of the year. The great thing about this assembly and all the planning that went into it is it allowed us to do the traditional things at an assembly that we would typically do. We were able to recognize our spring sports, we were able to have student-involved games, and we were also able to have our KDC performance that we do at every assembly. And so these three items are what we would typically see at a normal assembly in our Basha gym. What it also allowed us to do was expand our assembly. And so we were able to use a stadium audio system on our Basha football field, which gave the assembly a much grander and more exciting feel for students. And we were also able to schedule a special BMX performance at the assembly, which is something we would have not been able to do in the Basha gym rather than on the football field. And most importantly, it allowed us to follow the proper COVID-19 mitigation strategies with that. I want to touch on this in a little bit here, but the interesting thing I thought was that after surveying some of the juniors and seniors that have been to multiple assemblies throughout their high school career, we found that most people actually enjoyed this assembly on our football field more than a typical assembly in the Basha gym, which is something that I think our student government going into next year will consider for future assemblies as well. And lastly, but certainly not least, I talked about this at the last meeting here. Last Friday night was our Movie on the Lawn event, the day of the assembly. And this was amazing to finally see this event come through this year and to have our student population get together on our football field. 2 weeks before the event last Friday, we started promoting on our Basha Instagram stories, where we allowed our student population to vote on the movie that they wanted to see on the Basha football field. So we did this all throughout the week, the second week before the assembly. And ultimately, after some very close voting, our school decided to watch the movie The Incredibles on the football field last Friday night. We sold tickets through the bookstore for $7. It was a great experience on our Basha football field starting at 7:30 at night. And it was a really, really touching experience to see us all gather on our football field, watching the movie, having a great time on our own football field. It was also very touching to see the Jackson Landfair Foundation. Jackson Landfair is a belated Basha High School student from last year, and his parents have been starting this foundation in his name. And we contacted them and partnered with them to come at our event, and they sold these bracelets supporting Jackson Landfair for $1. And it was great to see that community involvement at our event as well. So Spirit Week, In-Person Assembly, and Movie on the Lawn were all last week. It was really the most action-packed and successful week we've had this year as a student government. And it really touches on 4 things, not just from the past week, but from our student government all year. Our creativity, our passion, our improvisation, and our dedication. Creativity, we've been forced to come up with new and creative events throughout the year that we've never done before. Nothing we've really been able to do this year has been normal, but we've not backed down. We've continued that passion for improving our school and continue to come up with creative ideas. Improvisation, I think that's been the name of the game, not just in student government, but this year, being able to adapt to change and understand how we can work things out as a student government to still deliver an excellent experience. And dedication to our school and our mission statement of benevolence, honor, and scholarship. So we've done a lot since I last spoke, but we're still not done. And there are still some stuff we want to do in this last and final month of our year. The biggest thing for us is our Teacher Appreciation Week. We understand and we want to appreciate how stressful this year has been for many teachers and how much work our teachers and administrators have put in for us students throughout this year. So we've been coordinating closely with our administration, as well as we have a couple special surprises for everybody at our school that we've been working hard on, just to understand and make sure teachers understand how much our student population genuinely cares about our staff at our school. It's one of the most meaningful things I think we're working on right now, especially because of how much we've been through this year. Our senior class is finalizing our senior class gift as a student government. There's some different plans in the works and talks on what's going to happen with that, but that's something they've been working on and delivering a meaningful gift. And I think it's one of those things where it's been a year unlike any other, and so they want to kind of give a unique gift to be remembered as the Basha class of 2021. And lastly, along with the seniors, we're looking, as Ava mentioned earlier, to close out our year with a senior sunset. It most likely will be fairly similar to our Movie on the Lawn event, but make it a very special night for the senior class of 2021 to share a special memory on the football field together. We're looking at the potential of having food trucks and making it just a fun night for our senior class of 2021 to bond at the end of the year to finish out the senior sunrise we started with this year. With that, I just want to say thank you once again for allowing me to come here this year and present. It's been the honor of my life to be able and share with you what Basha has been able to do this year and how I've been able to lead our community and really just adapt and improvise and make this year the best year we've had. On a more personal note, I'm planning on attending Georgetown University next year and majoring in computer science. And so as my career at Basha and my Basha chapter of my life kind of closes, I'm excited to open up this new chapter of my life and see where that takes me. So thank you very much.
Reed, thank you for coming here throughout the year when we've had this 2021, because anyway. And we do wish you the best of luck in your studying computer science. And we also have a desk plate for you, or with your name on it. And
Thank you so much.
Obviously, you will probably be at a desk a whole lot more
Yes.
being in computer science
Yes, thank
than
you very
in
much.
other fields. So please enjoy it, and have it as a memento of being with us this year. We will move on to our, and if you guys need to leave because you have studies or are planning more great events at your high schools, feel free to be able to leave. So, next we have our citizen comments, and I am asking Mr. Terry Locke to present the ones that we have received online.
Well, thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Castile. Since our last board meeting, we've heard from 188 people who took advantage of our electronic method to provide citizen comments. The overwhelming majority of the submissions centered around masks. Previously, comments from the public were pretty evenly divided between those who prefer to see us complete the school year requiring masks with those who want to make them optional immediately. To be expected, we heard from more of those who want to eliminate the mask requirement since the board voted to continue to make masks mandatory indoors through May 30th. Other comments submitted are categorized by extracurricular activities, cancel retirement celebration, curriculum, survey, governing board communications, and a thank you to the school board. Submitting comments electronically provides our governing board members time to read and prepare prior to the meeting. This format also provides the board an opportunity to ask clarifying questions to the administration. You have the submissions verbatim for your consideration. They are also available on the website for public review.
Thank you very much, Mr. Locke. We appreciate it, and all of the work that you put into collecting all these and categorizing them. So our next is for citizens' comments, which is the time for the public to comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. And therefore, pursuant to ARS 38430.01, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and discussion at a later date. Our first speaker this evening is Mr. Kurt Roars.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam Superintendent, staff and board members, my name is Kurt Roars. I'm a parent in this district. Come here this evening to address the board and staff members on the superintendent selection guidance process run by the Arizona School Board Association. The process selection of the new superintendent has begun. Dr. Camille Castillo announced her retirement as of June 30th. After an extraordinary run at developing the district as one of the preeminent organizations in the state, if not the entire region. We cannot thank her enough for her dedication and effort in achieving this distinction. Concern is the engagement of the Arizona School Board Association, known as the ASBA, to help guide the board in this process. The ASBA has become highly politicized and would be expected to steer the board to consider candidates that would satisfy their social agenda and ignore the viewpoints of the local community. And I remind the board it was the ASBA that promoted the deep equity public relations disaster that embarrassed the district in the national media. It was also your own diversity director, Dr. Damasalou, who was the keynote speaker at that conference that rolled out this deeply flawed program. This weekend, the ASB hosted another conference on diversity. The keynote speaker at the event was a Dr. Jennifer Harvey, an anti-racist activist who spoke on disrupting silence in all the white places. Her most recent book, quote, explores how white communities and leaders can more deeply support racial justice work being led by communities of color. She's also the author of Whiteness and Morality and Pursuing Racial Justice Through Reparations and Sovereignty, and co-editor of Disrupting White Supremacy. The ASBA promotes an advocacy group which weighs on political issues regarding education. They
30 seconds.
They routinely support Democratic candidates and oppose Republican ones, even in districts that have a plurality of Republican voters. This organization is not who we want to guide the selection process. The district must disengage with this highly politicized and biased group. They should seek to work with advisors who are more objective and apolitical. There's more much more likely produce a candidate that would be satisfactory to the whole community and lead us into the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roose. I do apologize for not announcing ahead of time that you had 2 minutes. But for all other speakers, it will be 2 minutes, and Dr. Nance will be timing and giving a 30-second warning. Our next individual is Kelly Burr.
Oh, thank you, and good evening. My name is Kelly Burr. I am asking the board to reconsider the ongoing mask mandate. Current infection rate of CUSD is 0.05%. The number of new COVID cases in Maricopa County continues to decline. There is no reason to wait until May 31st to reassess this. Many parents are already leaving the district for private or charter schools due to excessive COVID measures and a lack of attention to parents' wishes. Based on just the 202 comments submitted for this evening's meeting across all topics, 148 of those comments, 73%, were specifically asking to remove the mask mandate. Even the possible effectiveness of masks is really not relevant anymore, as few, if any, children wear them once they leave school. They play with the same friends, they go about their lives, they go to the same restaurants, they don't wear masks. Wearing them in school is doing nothing but making them uncomfortable. We're asking that at an absolute minimum, students no longer be required to wear masks while seated at their desks, or ideally, we ask that parents be properly surveyed like Ava did before they published their results, showing a clear 2-to-1 majority of both parents and students in favor of eliminating mask mandates. And within that 2 days, they made masks optional. Mesa, Higley, Queen Creek, ALA, Santan Charter, Gilbert Christian, Legacy, Val Vista Academy, and EduPrise have already made masks optional. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next up is Leslie Gwilliam.
Hiya. My remarks are short, but I am a parent for my child in the district, and you guys have a responsibility to the parents and children. And national attention does happen, and we matter. So how about you listen to us, and how about you work for us? Because a mask particle is only 1,000 times smaller than any of the masks you guys would have on your face can stop. So it doesn't work, it doesn't help. It's psychologically damaging to our children. And you guys are the ones that can help relieve that so that our children can be free from masks, to be a child, and be able to work in the schools the way they're meant to be. So please listen to us so that our children can be free.
Thank you. Please, we usually don't allow clapping for speakers, just our presenters for things. So our next is Kelly Maher.
Maher, thank you. I'm here today because I want masks off of my kids in school. I spent last week viewing the meeting where I heard more about feelings and poor analogies than data. Data that shows low COVID numbers in our schools. 26 cases in 49,000 is what I saw on the last dashboard. Supporting a return to normal with continued awareness. What came out of last week's meeting was a concession to remove young children's masks during outside physical play in the desert. It was a concession of emotion. Instead, the data supports that we parents should be able to choose at this point whether we want to continue masking our children. I am counting on the board to speak for me and my kids from a place of wisdom backed by data, like neighboring districts have. Further, some of the enforcement of this ill-advised continued mandate is outrageous. High school students being removed from class by security like they've brought drugs into the school. Threatened with graduation if they don't continue to attend with a mask on. These are great students, easygoing kids that are struggling psychologically with covering their faces for over a year now. And our younger children being told they'll be placed outside to wait for their parents to retrieve them if they don't want to wear a mask. It's horrible. We have kids crying that they want to see their friends' smiles, and they should be able to because the data supports it.
30 seconds.
I keep hearing we aren't going to please anyone, but I am so sick and tired of being the last considered, and I say without apology, I am the majority. I'm not asking anyone else to not have a choice. They should be able to choose. I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable or afraid. They should be able to choose as well. So I'm here, and I'm not pulling up stakes, and I'm not leaving my home and my district and my schools. I want to be part of the solution, and I am begging you to
Time has
speak for
expired.
me.
Thank you. Kimberly Cornelius, I don't know if that's an N or a U. If you take your mask off, would you please utilize the microphone to your left? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kim, and I have a comment regarding masks as well. By not making masks optional, as countless charter, private, and public schools already have, you have failed our children, and you have demonstrated a lack of leadership. By forcing masks on our kids, you are violating the Parental Bill of Rights, and you are violating the ADA by not accepting medical exceptions. Today, I and thousands of other parents demand an answer to the following. Will you put in writing that our children will not be in masks next year, unless absolutely mandated by the state? There are no state mandates now, and yet you still feel this power to keep our kids in masks all day against their parents' wishes, again violating our Parental Bill of Rights. What specific criteria are you using to make these determinations? As your dashboards are empty. My son suffers from headaches and dizziness from wearing masks at school. This is totally unacceptable. Can you give the parents assurance today that unless state mandated, masks will remain optional? Board members feeling comfortable is not a valid reason to impair the mental and physical well-being of thousands of kids. We have choices as parents to make, and it's imperative that we know a specific plan and get a commitment from you. Stop abusing our children. Those who want to
30
wear a
seconds.
mask can still wear a mask. This is the best way forward in a world with so much divide and emotion on this subject. Personal choice, personal freedom, personal accountability to do what's best for you and your child and your family. There's no threat, yet you continue to cover the faces of our children for hours at a time, day in, day out, causing mental and physical anguish. Enough is enough. How much data do you need to show masks are
Time has
ineffective?
expired. Ryan Heap.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening, board members. First off, Mr. Olive, you insinuated parents' pleas to have their children attend school without masks remind you of statements made by smokers from the 70s, I think you said. Really? Children are not vermin. They are not coronavirus gas bags that will infect others unless they wear masks at all times. No, they are the least likely to be infected and the least likely to infect others. That is fact. CUSD's teachers and staff who want the vaccine have received it. That is fact. About masks, did you know masks trap CO2 and over extended time the wearer will suffer from hypoxia and hypercapnia. Masks quickly become moist. That breeds bacteria and bacterial viruses, which the wearer will ingest. Heat and humidity break down the masks, releasing toxins from them into the air the wearer breathes. I ask you, please stop poisoning our children with their own carbon dioxide and bacteria. This board decided to continue the virtual model to start this year. It cost you nearly 2,400 students and around $13 million. This district wasn't alone. All districts that continued the virtual model saw huge declines in enrollment and hefty budget deficits. Meanwhile, ALA, the Their enrollment skyrocketed, almost 400%. Wouldn't you like that in this
30
district?
seconds.
You cannot end this year with your vague promise that masks will be optional provided infection rates are low. That is not a promise. What does that mean? I guarantee that your low is different from the low of families in this district. Had you voted last week to lift the mandate, I wouldn't be here. And my wife wouldn't be at Ben Franklin attending their open house. Okay? I want to stay here. Our kids want to stay here. This is a phenomenal district.
Time has expired. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I do want to remind everyone that they do need to wear their masks in the boardroom. Our next is Stephanie Tokaras.
Hello. Don't touch that. Get that out of your mouth. This is what I've been telling my kids for the last 8 years. And now you're telling them to put a bacteria-riddled cloth over their nose and mouth and breathe through it all day. I swabbed one of the masks he wore at school. This was the result. I did several types of materials. I did different cleaning methods. I did ones that weren't even worn. And they're all disgusting. You say you're not comfortable taking the masks off our kids next year? I'm not comfortable with them breathing this in all day. You are supposed to stand up for us and our children, not just your personal feelings. You say you are worried about the kids that might get anxious sitting next to someone with a mask. What about the kids that are anxious in masks? You told them they could go back to online academy. You told them they should get you told their parents that you should put them in counseling. It seems the only kids you worry about are the ones that fit the outcome you personally want. You say those that want the freedom to choose are the equivalent of smokers from the 70s. Smoking deprives you and those around you of oxygen. It looks to me like you are the smokers that are dismissing the right of everyone else to breathe fresh air. Finally, please just stop running this district into the ground. We don't want to leave. We want to go to this district. My kids don't want to leave.
30 seconds.
Just start using common sense and logic and data in your decisions instead of your opinion, and stop using arbitrary terms like low. Define those numbers so that we can decide if we are staying with those or if we are going. Thank you.
Thank you. Brianne Hamilton.
Hello. Can I go?
Yes.
Okay. We elected you to make decisions and choices, entrusting you to always choose what is in the best interest for our children. Last week's decision to not end the mask mandate was not in the best interest of our children. Studies on mask wearing states that they can cause headaches, anxiety, heart palpitations, and much more. The CDC states the chance of children being infected with COVID is 0.008%. Are we really thinking about the children's welfare when we force them to wear masks? Districts around us continue to pull mask mandates for the current school year, but here we sit in Chandler with no choice. Teachers, parents, and community members have the opportunity to get vaccinated. Unfortunately, you allowed your personal feelings to dictate the facts and override the scientific data that children do not need masks. I come here requesting that the board share specific details in all future plans in regards to the mask mandate for the 21-22 school year at the May 12th board meeting. You stated next year, if numbers were low, masks would be optional. I want to know what low means. What data will you be using for guidance? We as parents deserve to know. Our children deserve to know. We have rights as a parent to decide what is in the best interest for our child. We as parents deserve to be informed of the plan moving forward in regards to masks so that we can decide if the district of choice is still our choice. And since I have a little time, I was a teacher in Chandler, and I love public education, and I still have faith in it.
30 seconds.
Every day, I just can't believe what's going on here, and I just see so many good parents leaving the district, and you guys are losing, and you're forgetting, who those kids are. So thank you.
Thank you. Karen Ketch.
am Kayson Ketch, and I'll like to talk about masks. The thing is with masks is that you used to allow like face shields and masks. So I wore a face shield because ever since I started wearing a mask, I had breathing problems. And when I stopped wearing a mask for a while because I wasn't going to school on break, I actually was feeling better on my breathing. But after I got from break, there was no face shield, so I had to go back to regular mask, and we actually ran through a lot of masks real quickly. So then also, now that I have breathing problems, and the mask is going to get really hot, makes it even harder. So for me, breathing is going to be a really problem. And also, one of my friends has asthma, so he has really trouble breathing, and he can only run for like 5 seconds now, and then he gets like out of breath. Can you please like move the mask mandate a little closer to the end? Like, I want it to end sooner, or at least just like bring in face shields, because I have a real trouble like speaking with a mask, and my teacher sometimes like she can't even talk because of the mask. So can you please remove the mask mandate? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kayson. I thought I apologize for misreading it and thought it was Karen. So thank you, Kayson. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Katie Nash.
All right. Thank you, board and administration that is here tonight. I wanted to take a moment to recognize next week, which is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I'd like to lump also in there our classified staff, our support staff members, and just read to you some definitions of teacher. So a teacher is an individual who instructs or trains others, one who helps others learn and understand new information, an instructor who inspires and encourages students to strive for greatness, a surrogate parent, disciplinarian, mentor, counselor, and planner, a role model. And I also like this one who makes a positive difference in the lives of many, an extraordinary human being who is compassionate, inspiring, courageous, heroic, and amazing. I do have a little bit of time left. I just want to give the teacher perspective. I think we've heard some perhaps exaggerated claims. I am a teacher in the classroom. My high school students have told me they won't come to school for the last 2 weeks if we lift the mask mandate. They're so afraid of missing their end of the year celebrations that they would rather stay home and self-quarantine than to put themselves, their families, and their teachers at risk. I wear this mask 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. We don't have students passing out, breathing difficulties, headaches. Maybe there's a few kiddos who have that, but that is not the majority. And we keep hearing from parents to support what the majority is asking. There's not a clear majority in this case. We are a district of choice, and in this case, we have to err on the side of caution. Masks are shown to be effective at preventing the spread of COVID. That's why we have low infection rates in our school. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is Jill, but I don't have a last name. Jill, could you please state your full name?
Sure,
Jill. And if you're going to take off your mask, could you go to the microphone that's to your left?
Sure.
Thank you.
Jill Vermeer.
Thank
Do you want me
you.
to go back here, or does it
No,
matter?
just stay there.
Are you guys ready?
Yes, go ahead.
So I have 2 kids in the district currently, and I've learned by your actions this year that you just don't seem to care or listen to what parents have to say. But I decided to come here anyways to speak up, and my kids are so important to me, and I'm really tired of the way our schools are being perceived as a dictatorship anymore. You canceled prom, minimized graduations again this year, decided that masks are now a law for CUSD, and you're more focused on pushing critical race theory nonsense on our kids. Regarding mask wearing, how dare you act like a medical personnel by forcing a medical device on anyone, especially our children? Even in the parents' handbook that's issued each year by the state superintendent, that notes that the liberty of parents to direct the upbringing, education, healthcare, and mental health of their children is a fundamental right that we're in charge of, not you. You're blaming Ducey and the CDC for the executive order that's now been removed. The fact is you've chose to enforce the mask rule and you're treating it as if it's law. Since you created this rule, you can also revise it to be a choice and stop the enforcement. After watching the meeting last week, because you wouldn't allow anyone to attend, it was ridiculous that you're comparing masks to indoor smoking and saying we can't make decisions for the future. That's exactly what you are here to do, make decisions for the future. You cannot wait for numbers to be lower. We will never hit 0 cases. The tests are only 60% effective. Masks need to be a choice now. When you make a mistake, you fix it immediately. I looked into the CUSD mask exemption for my kids, the form. It's ridiculous. Alternatives for wearing a mask that are mentioned
30 seconds.
Wearing a shield, changing their schedule, online learning, or segregating my kids from their peers. Those are not substitutes. Why do mask lovers get their way and non-maskers don't? There's no proof that this has eliminated COVID. Some of the nearby schools, many of them have already gotten rid of and removed their mask mandates. You guys already know who they are. Queen Creek, ALA, Santan Charter, Gilbert Christian, Hickley District, Great Hearts, Legacy, Val Vista, Academy, EVIT, and more. You're destroying an A+ school district when Arizona already struggled.
Time has expired. Jason Vermeer.
Where do you want me? Here?
There, yes.
Hi, my name is Jason Vermeer. I tell my kids, question everything, do your own research, make up your own mind, and take action. Year over year, Chandler, Arizona, 2,400 less children in this district, 180 teachers are set to be laid off next year, $13 million shortage on your $300 million budget. Neighboring Gilbert, Arizona, 1,600 less children, 150 teachers are already being laid off. You all are begging for federal funding. Why? When the student numbers are so rapidly decreasing. I hope more parents leave. It serves you right for being tyrants. 21 active COVID cases in Chandler out of 42,000 kids, 0.049%. Gilbert, 12 active cases, 35,000 students in Gilbert, 0.035%. The public school system is broken. You have lost trust of parents. Mask mandates, forcing vaccines, canceling prom, limiting graduation, critical race theory, the list goes on. When is enough enough? On April 2021, I was personally called and threatened by the Chandler Police Department on behalf of the Chandler Unified School District. The officer said if I come to my high school's sports with no mask again, I will be arrested for trespassing. I have filed a formal complaint. Kids are being given detention, suspension, harassed, bullied by people in this district. You have canceled prom, but we parents stood up. We have 5 private proms for over 2,000 kids in Chandler. You took away graduation limits. You had 2, and then all of a sudden, with Camille's retirement, you magically increased it to 4. You guys are wrong. Parents, you have the power. You have to stand up to this now. Our parental rights are being violated. Number 1, leave the public school system.
Expired. Thank you. We're now going to move on to our consent agenda. Dr. Castile.
Madam President, members of the board, we have an out-of-state student travel pre-planning request form from Hamilton High School. Monetary approval, request to approve monetary gifts given to Chandler Schools totaling $76,389.84. We have items, Chandler Schools for $33,473.76. We have audit services. We solicited proposals to provide audit services for the district. We sent it out to 33 vendors, and we had 5 vendor responses. The committee evaluated, and we are requesting approval to award the contract to Heinfield Meach and Company. We requested approval to enter a 1-year contract with options to renew on an annual basis for 4 additional years in the amount of $69,450. Better Chinese, Better Immersion materials are designed to teach language and culture to students in pre-kindergarten, in the pre-kindergarten setting. The highly engaging and age-appropriate resources provide an introduction to words, phrases, and character writing. You saw an example of our Chinese immersion program a few weeks ago. The series is designed as a set of 36 storybooks for students' use and comes with a teacher's guide. The total cost is $6,126.03, funded through the district textbook budget. It includes materials, online licensing, shipping, and applicable taxes. High School number 7, which we refer to as High School 7, but it is Arizona College Prep. We're requesting approval of the items below. The total expense is $189,623.17. These are band, orchestra, choir furniture, and you have the list. Pretty common and routine purchases so that we have it in time for our students. Number 7 is our consent agenda for our salary schedules. Our certified psychologist, speech therapy, speech language pathologist, occupational physical therapist, therapeutic counselor, and social workers, and our human resources, employment separation, and compensation. Recommend approval of the consent agenda as provided.
Thank you, Dr. Castile. Could I please get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Our next item, our action items, is for the elementary sally ports. Mr. Fletcher.
Madam President, members of the board, before we start, Sallyport is a reference to a secure controlled entryway. It's also commonly referred to with prisons. That is not what we are building. We are building a central point of access after students are on campus. So anybody after kids are on campus will go into this lobby, will not be allowed to proceed on campus until they are authorized. So Sallyport is really a reference, not exactly what we're building that you would see in a fort or a prison. With that being said, in an effort to provide additional security at our elementary schools, it is proposed to build a Sallyport at the following sites: Auxier, Basha, Carlson, Fulton, Haley, Hull, Patterson, and Riggs Elementaries. The district has chosen Concord General Contracting as the general contractor for this project using a 1 GPA purchasing cooperative which complies with all school procurement rules. A contract of $548,761 has been negotiated for all sites. We recommend approval of Concord General Contracting for a total contract cost of $548,761 for Sallyports at the 8 above listed elementary sites.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Could I please get a motion?
So moved.
To approve.
Sorry. No, I was stuck. Sorry. I just got it. So I make a motion to approve Concord General Contracting to build Sallyports at Auxier, Basha, Carlson, Fulton, Haley, Hull, Patterson, and Riggs Elementary School for a total contract cost of $548,761.
Second.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Fletcher? Mr. Fletcher, could you please, I guess, explain how utilizing a cooperative works when we are dealing with school purchases?
So a purchasing cooperative is an organization that does purchasing contracts for multiple members. So one GPA, you join to be a member of it. If you use one of their contracts, we have a due diligence to make sure that they have followed all the school procurement rules. Similar to state contract, the school procurement office, it's similar to Guppies, it's similar to SAVE, the Strategic Alliance for Voluminous Purchases or Expenditures. So really what they're doing is they're doing the legwork for us, and then it allows us to buy off those contracts.
And what would you say are some of the advantages to working on or utilizing those contracts?
It saves us about 6 to 8 weeks in time, majority of it, and also sometimes we don't have the technical expertise that they go out, that the cooperatives go out and get to put the proposals together.
Great, thank you. The other question that may actually end up going to Mrs. Berry, I noticed the funding is from the 2019 bond, and I know that we had a bunch of security in that 2019 bond, so these were planned really as security measures for quite a long time now, is that correct?
Yes, they definitely have been planned for, and certain ones are going to be accomplished now, and then they'll plan for additional ones in the future.
Okay. And would you also then comment about, I guess, the accountability that we have in utilizing bond funds for the appropriate type things?
You bet. Great question, Ms. Mosman. So under the statute, we are required to come back to the governing board and present how we have expensed funds in our bond funds every single year. So we come back in September, October, and we review with the governing board what we have spent. We are required to spend within the areas that was on the voter pamphlet. And we can exceed that by 10% in an area as long as we pull it from another area, as long as we've had that area approved by the voters. So we track that. We track every single line item that's in the voter pamphlet. We can, like I said, go over by 10% because of cost escalation, things like that. But we track each and every one of those line items. We account for it within our fixed asset system, which then our auditors review each year. And we also account for all the funds in our financial statement, our CAFR, so that the board and our bondholders can see that. We also upload all of our documentation for our bond sales to Emma, some of the reporting requirements, so that our bondholders can see a lot of our financial pieces related to that. So there's a number of compliance issues that we are required to do to make sure the voters, we're approving items that match what the voter pamphlet stated.
And could you also just comment a little bit on the kinds of things that bonds are used for and can't be used for?
Great question, Ms. Mosden. So yes, bonds, a lot of times people think when a bond is approved that you can spend it on salaries and benefits, and unfortunately you cannot. Bonds are spent for what we call the material things, and for buildings, for buses, for technology, for the infrastructure side of things. So we do, in our district, majority of the money goes to building new schools or renovating new schools. It pays for our buses that transports our students to and from. It buys the majority of the technology that we have here in our district. And then it also pays for furniture and equipment and items that we need throughout our school district.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Berry, you mean fortunately it can't be spent on salaries?
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately?
Oh,
You don't want bonds being used to pay
but-
salaries.
Well, sometimes in Arizona we might want some of those.
No.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
No, just thank you to Mr. Fletcher for the explanation of the Sally ports and that difference. I know we've gotten some questions about that, so thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
I guess we are ready to vote then. All those in favor of our increased security areas at the schools that we're calling Sally ports, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have our community education plan for Little Explorers. Mrs. Berry.
Madam President, members of the board, annually, financials for the Community Education Department are reviewed to determine what the future revenue and expenses will need to be in order to meet the financial needs of the district. Unfortunately, the Little Express program has lost money for a number of years. The district is committed to addressing this problem. By increasing revenues and decreasing expenses, it is anticipated that this program could be more in line with district expectations. The Little Explorers target is to have a minimum of at least 305 students enrolled throughout fiscal year 21-22. By recommending an enrollment fee increase of 5%, revenues are projected to increase by over $133,000. Recommendations follow. Infants the expense for infants would be $249 a week, and it would go up to $261 or $1,044 a month. So that's an increase of $16 per week. Ages 1 to 2 are currently at $216 and would go up to $227 per week or $908 a month. And ages 3 through 4, which are currently at $201 per week, would go up to $211 per week or $844 a month. In an effort to reduce expenditures, it is recommended to close the Hamilton site. Enrollment should increase at the other 3 sites, which are Chandler High School, Basha, and Perry. So the current staffing model would be more efficient. Additionally, enrollment will be monitored daily to align staffing to attendance, so this should decrease expenses. The Little Express is the only program recommended changes at this time. Community education will analyze specific programs within the department, and next year will bring future recommendations to the governing board. Recommendation is to increase a 5% fee increase for Little Explorers and to minimize the Little Explorers locations.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I recommend a 5% fee increase for Little Explorers and minimize Little Explorers locations.
Second.
All right, are there any questions for Mrs. Berry? Yes, Ms. Love.
I do, because I just got some emails about it and I pulled them up right before. So there seems to be a concern, not with the price increase, but the closure of the Hamilton site, because a lot of teachers utilize it and we have students who intern with that program. Has there been any consideration in terms of that? Like if we had students who wanted to intern at Little Explorers, could they be sent to different sites? And then how do we support our teachers at Hamilton that use Little Explorers?
Sure. So currently, our teachers across the school district, if they're at an elementary or junior high, they are going to one of the 4 locations. So the Hamilton teachers would be like, for example, like a Tarwater elementary teacher. They would have to drop them off at one of the 3 locations. I believe Mr. Hewitt told me today that continuing next year, not the 4-year-olds will be in kindergarten, but there will be 17 employees at Hamilton who would have to pick a different location, Chandler High, Perry, or Basha. So it would impact 17 employees that would have to drive to one of those locations. And that would be just the same as all of our other schools within our boundaries. And we'll work with those. We're sending out a letter to each of them, and we will work with them on which location is best for them. We definitely will have opportunities to do some internships if that's needed. With our schools, we will work with those students. We just have one less location that we'll do that. A lot of the staff will be located at all 3 locations. But we're just minimizing the staff because right now the numbers are so low compared to our staffing ratios that putting them together helps so that we can ultimately maximize the cost of the program. And then we're not having to use maintenance and operations dollars to offset those programs.
Do our teachers get a discount with Little Explorers, or do they have to pay the full fee like any community member would?
I believe there's a slight adjustment for an employee. It's not like the Kids Express program because of the cost and the ratios. Okay. And so for us, this program has been, unfortunately, is very expensive because of the criteria of the number of staff to students, which is different than the Kids Express program where we can have multiple students to one staff member.
Okay.
So it's harder to give a bigger discount because of that.
And my last question, I guess, would be, how, like when you have a teacher who is breastfeeding and they have their child at the site, how does that impact things?
I believe they can, we make adjustments for that. They can come in and see their child and take a break with their child at this point.
Okay. So if we remove it from Hamilton and they have like, you have teachers there who have like infants who are breastfeeding, that would certainly impact their abilities, right?
Sure, it would be the same as all of our employees. If you have an employee here at the district office and they would like to do that with their child at Chandler High School, they would drive over to Chandler High School and they would be able to do that. So we have, 40 plus schools and we only have 4 locations. So 36 of those schools are making those, accommodations. They have to come to those sites. So it would be just the same as all of our other schools and all of our other support staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a quick question. Years ago, when my kids were this age and we actually looked at this option and it was a lot cheaper, but there was no way for us to get into it because there just weren't any spaces. How does this stand up to and what people are paying for nowadays?
Mr. Hewitt is our director of community education, and he does a comparison to the other area programs, if it's, for example, the for-profit or nonprofit child care programs, and it is very comparable. It's actually slightly less than majority of the programs that are out there. We're still competitive. We have raised our prices over the last few years, and so it's competitive, but unfortunately, it's just very expensive to run. The little kids, I think out in the private world, they take a loss in the area of the Little Explorers, knowing that they'll gain the older kids as they come through their programs, and they maximize on that. And we do too. Our Kids Express program has been very successful and has helped offset the cost of Little Explorers. We just don't know if that's something we want to continue to maintain, losing money in that area, or if that's for the profit world to be able to undertake in the future.
I have a question too. You were talking about, let's see, that they were going to be analyzing the attendance on a daily basis. And so how, is this a drop-in program? Is this do they register for the whole week? How does that work? And do we have the capability to be that flexible and say, oh, well, we only have, enough children for 2 staff members today, so A, B, and C, you guys don't come in today?
These are all great questions. And Mrs. Mosden, we do have options where they can pick the whole week or they can pick certain days to come in. We did change the contracts last year. The board allowed us to make the changes actually for this year to have at-will contracts for our employees. And so part of the issue has been for our employees that when we don't have enough students that are at those sites or our children at those sites, that we don't have as many care come in to watch those kids, just like they would at a tutor time or another child daycare facility. So we're going to be monitoring those and making sure that we have the right staff and the right number compared to the number of students that are enrolled there. And as those drop, increase, or decrease, we do the same with our staff. Since this is a cash fund and it's not supported by the state, it's only supported by the revenue that's brought in for this program.
Now, will we be allowing, are each of those employees at a fixed site, or will they be, like if one of the schools has an extra few kids one day, would you be able to move somebody from a different location if they didn't have enough at their site?
Again, great question. Yes, we absolutely can move staffing. We do that on a regular basis right now to cover staffing. We've had a lot of help from Community Ed Central staff to go out and cover for staff members at all site locations. So we allow flexibility with our staff all over the place, and that's been fantastic for our staff.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mrs. Bruner.
I have a question. Go ahead.
I was curious, I see how much it'll save by increasing the cost, but I was wondering how much it's going to save to shut down the Hamilton program.
So as you know, we don't pay utilities in a sense for Hamilton, and it's not like we have a loan against the building like you would at a tutor time. But on the staffing side, we will reduce 1 lead. We have 4 leads right now, so we will go down to 3 leads, which that on average is about $40,000 by the time you have salaries, benefits, and expenses related to that. But overall, then too, we should be able to decrease our number of hourly staff members at at the site. Overall, our hourly for 4 sites should go down slightly because I'll be able to put more kids per age group with each staff member. So once we have enrollment, then we'll maximize that staff. Right now, all the sites haven't been fully occupied by students, and so it's hard for us with over 4 locations to staff it appropriately. They've had really small numbers to compare to the actual number of staff members. So we'll be able to maximize that a little bit better.
I guess it's hard to know because you don't know who's going to go to a different place or who's going to move over to Basha or whatever, like if we're going to keep the same income or not, right?
Well, we're trying to, we want to have at least 305 students at 3 locations. So right now, that's spread over 4. We have less than that. We're trying to increase the participation at 3 locations to try to maximize the number of students at each, or number of children at each of those sites. So then you can maximize your staff a little bit better. You can, of the care at the level 1s, 2s, and 3s, you don't have to have as many at all 4 locations.
Was advertising explored prior to this decision?
We have been advertising. Mr. Hewitt is in charge of that piece with his staff, and we have advertised over the years. We are definitely working on an advertising piece for enrollment, but definitely Mr. Hewitt has been doing that over the years.
And do we know how much money we're going to lose in CTE funding for, I'm assuming that the students who were working with the high school students who were working with the children were
Can you
part of the
refer to the
CTE program?
money? We receive money for JTED, for block grant, and for basic. Oh, for which program?
We won't lose anything from the CTE funds, and Mr. Rand's over there as well, but we have some students who don't intern in the early childhood. Some of them go to our elementaries, and so we work with neighboring schools that they can also work at if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Worth.
Mrs. Berry, you mentioned something about at will. I'm not sure what you meant by that.
Sure. So we changed our classified employees in our community ed program to be at will, so that we work when we have the need for them in those programs, but we can change their contract or their daily schedule throughout the year.
Right. Are there any other questions on this? Okay. All those in favor of the 5% fee increase for Little Explorers and minimize the Little Explorers locations, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion.
Opposed, sorry.
You're opposed. Okay. The motion carries 4-1. Ms. Love voted no. Mrs. Nye. We now have some information items. Our first one is on our student activities, auxiliary operations, and tax credit reports. Mrs. Berry.
Madam President, members of the board, the student activity, auxiliary operations, and tax credit reports for the months ending July 20th through March 2021 are provided for review. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Do you have any comments on them that you would like to share with the board?
Well, you're going to see that revenues are obviously down due to the activities throughout the year. As in the past, we would be having trips and tax credit based on activities that the kids are participating in. So obviously revenues are down, which means expenditures are down for the fiscal year. Some items still, there's a few negatives throughout the reports, will be cleaned up. It's somebody coding it to the wrong account, auxiliary tax credit or student activities. That gets cleaned up by the end of the fiscal year, or gets adjusted, but we have to a lot of times have minutes and information back from those sponsors and then we clean it up once they give us that information back.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next is Basha High School's Institute of Cyber Operations and Networking, Career and Technical Education Network Security Program, Ethics and Technology. Dr. Gilbert.
It was a mouthful. Madam President, members of the board, Basha High School's Institute of Cyber Operations and Networking, ICON for short, will be adding Security Fundamentals and Ethics in IT course, which is Cyber 400, beginning school year 21-22. This career and technical education course will be the 3rd year of the cyber program. The district recently moved through a textbook adoption process for this course, and in accordance with ARS 15721 and COSD policy IJJ and IJJ-R. The 2 current cyber teachers and the cyber program specialist reviewed and evaluated all curriculum textbooks by the publisher. The committee is recommending Ethics in Information Technology 6th edition textbook by Cengage to move forward in the textbook adoption process. The following items are included: print student textbooks, ebooks, 6-year license, online instructor resources. The cost for the curriculum is $4,620, including shipping and process fee. This will be funded through the district textbook budget. In accordance with ARS 15721, the curriculum will be placed on display for the 60-day public review period for comment at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center starting April 29th, 2021. After the 60-day review period for public comments, the curriculum will be presented for approval to the governing board.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Are there any questions from the board? Dr. Gilbert, I believe you have the next one also. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have,
I
Mrs.
just
Bruner?
wanted to ask, I think we mentioned this before, and did we figure out a way that when there's new curriculum to possibly make it viewable online rather than having to go and see it in person? Is that a possibility for this, or have we figured that out yet? Or?
I don't think in this particular one we figured that out, but we are looking into it as what is the best way in order to be able to do that.
Okay.
But we will work on that.
Thank you.
If you could, well, I would think if you could put it on the computer, you could copy it and it would be yours and you wouldn't have to buy it, right?
But they usually have at least ways for you to view without being able to copy. I would especially think when it's cybersecurity materials, they'd figure that out.
Mr. Rand, if you don't mind, you might be able to share.
I would mimic the same thing that Mr. Olive said, that it would be difficult with the companies because they're like regular school textbook publishers. I'd have to check with them for both of these curriculums. But I when I communicated back with them saying that we needed the 60 days, they really wanted to know how are people coming to view it, who's going to have the passwords, how are you ensuring no one's taking pictures or making copies. So I had to reassure them that for this one it's just a hardbound book, so it's out and we monitor it. Right. But the next one is a online resource, and so we have to log them in. We can't give the passwords out. But I can ask.
Yeah, we can continue to look into it. It's just very difficult because the companies are trying to protect, their product. Right. So it just makes it a little difficult. Thank you.
And Dr. Gilbert, why don't we just move on to the second one? That's yours also on cybersecurity.
Madam President, members of the board, Basha High School's Institute of Cyber Operations and Networking will be adding Security Fundamentals and Ethics in IC Course Cyber 400 beginning 2021. This career and technical education course will be the third of the year. As I shared with the previous, you'll see it's still under ARS 15721 as well as CUSD policy IJJ and IJJ-R. The 2 current cyber teachers and the cyber program specialist reviewed and evaluated all curriculum submitted by the publisher. The committee is recommending Security Pro online curriculum by TestOut to move forward in the textbook adoption process. TestOut provides an advanced IT simulation environment for students, simulating hardware, software, operating systems, the entire network environments where students can practice IT skills in a realistic environment. In addition, hands-on practice and testing to ensure student master concepts and gain knowledge needed to successfully pass the CompTIA Security Plus industry credential. Price is guaranteed for 2 years at $2,650 per year for a total of $5,167. License will be provided accessing for 50 students each year. This will be funded through the district textbook budget. In accordance with ARS 15721, the curriculum will be placed on display for the 60-day public review period for comment at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center starting April 29th, 2021. After the 60-day review period, the public comments, the curriculum will be presented to the governing board for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Are there any questions? on this one? Dr. Gilbert, do parents need to make any kind of reservations at the resource center, or can they just walk in during the normal
I believe
business hours?
they can just walk in, just like we do all of our other textbooks. I'm real fortunate that we have Mr. James and Mr. Ann who work closely with this program with Basha High School, and I have to just give some kudos to Janet Harkoff out at Basha, who has really taken the lead on this program. I know this is not part of this, but I got to give it to her because she is growing that program. I believe we have over 250 students in the program. We're moving into our third year, and it is continuing to grow. It's getting publication. So I had to just throw that out there because they are really doing great work with this program at Basha High School.
So that does make me think of a question, and that is whether 50 licenses are going to be enough for not next year, but the year afterwards.
It will be enough for the number of students that are going into the third year for next year. But I believe also with the way that the class is structured, what we have, I guess what I would say is knowing Ms. Harkoff, if there was more needed, it would be on here based on what she knows that's coming through and how she's going to utilize these licenses. But I assure you, and I know with the team, if more is needed, we will come back to the board.
Okay, because, as you're saying, 250 kids already, and that's only 3 levels, and that's more than, and I assume this is a required class for all.
Well, this does get to the third level, but I will say you're having students that are moving up through the first year, which is a year-long and a semester course, and then the second year is a year-long course. So there's a process of it moving through, but I know the nice piece with at least this one is that it is electronic, it's online, so if we did need to access to get more and bring it to the board, we would do that.
Great, thank you. All right, if there's no more questions, we will move on to our comprehensive audited financials. Mrs. Berry.
Madam President, members of the board, it's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Shields. She is a partner at Heinfeld & Meach, and we are very fortunate to have them as our auditors. Tonight, we are going to talk about the comprehensive audited financial report, which is our CAFR, referred to as the CAFR, and our single audit reporting package. It's also reported to, you can see the abbreviations SARP, for the year ending June 30th, 2020. So this is last year's information that we're reviewing with you. Tonight it's presented as information only. It's not an action item. It's just you'll have the opportunity to hear from Mrs. Shields and ask any questions that you have related to the CAFR or the single audit. I'm going to, when she's finished, I'm going to review with you the USFR, which is the Uniform System of Financial Records questionnaire that we have a response on for each of the items that we weren't in compliance with so that you can understand what we're doing and how we'll fix that in the future. But I'm going to take the time to turn it over to Mrs. Shields.
Thank you. May I just interrupt for a moment? I see on your screen it says year ended June 30th, 2021. Is that supposed to be 2020?
My apologies, yes.
Okay.
That should be 21
I'm
or
just
2020.
like, when she's saying it was from last year, I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we get our dates mixed up occasionally. So thank you, Mrs. Berry. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Castile, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you about, yes, the year ended June 30th, 2020. My apologies. So I have a presentation prepared. I believe you have this all loaded and you can review it as well. So I'll try to keep my remarks fairly brief. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was the timeline, which is up on your screen. And although we are currently in April of 2021, we are still in fact talking about the 2020 year ended June 30th. You can see the timeline. We do start audit procedures usually about this time. And then work continues through what we would call kind of like your first semester and ultimately culminates with the issuance of the audit report. It is dated in December. And so you can see what those dates are. And in case you're curious about the delay between when the audit report was actually available for issue and now, it's because of some of the other documents that Ms. Berry was talking about. So just to talk a little bit about the scope of our audit services, audits mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but what this audit is entailing
is performing the audit in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and of course the uniform guidance. And as Ms. Berry mentioned, we do also complete the USFR compliance questionnaire. So we have, our audit standards require two-way communications between the auditor and the board. And so there was a letter that was provided to the board back in December, and it went through some of the responsibilities of what the auditee is responsible for versus the auditor. And so one of the things that the auditor is responsible for is to design reasonable, the audit itself is designed to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance about the financial activities of the district. Management is ultimately responsible for the financial statements themselves. And then with respect to fraud communications, we do perform a number of inquiries of various personnel, including board members. But again, ultimately, the responsibility for any fraud prevention rests with the board and management. During the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020, the district did implement a new governmental accounting standards, which was required. And that was the implementation of what we refer to as GASB Statement 84. Essentially what that did was that brought all of your student clubs, your student activities into the district's financial statements. In terms of some of the other required communications, there are significant estimates that are included in the district's financial statement, and we've listed the three most significant of the estimates that are there. So management estimates how long capital assets will be used for. Management also estimates what insurance claims are incurred but not reported as of the end of the fiscal year. And so that's for health insurance benefits that the district provides for employees and dependents. And so the district has some costs that are associated with that. And then, of course, in terms of the state retirement plan, we talked about that, I think, probably a few years ago when I was here. But the audit standards do require that the unfunded portion of the state retirement system that is attributable to district employees be included. And so there's a number of different assumptions that are made with respect to that. In terms of audit adjustments, we're happy to report that there were no audit adjustments that require disclosure to the board, so that's a good thing. And then also, as auditors, we also provide certain non-audit services. So what those involved is we assist with the actual preparation of the financial statements, and then also assist with the preparation of what's called the CFA. It's the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards, and the data collection form that's required by the uniform guidance. So we get that information from district financials from the accounting office, and we take all of that information, we audit it, and then we compile it into the financial statements. Other required communications, we had no disagreements with management, which is always good to report. Management did provide the required disclosures and representations to us at the end of the audit. And then as in terms of with our own professional standards, we as a firm are continually monitoring our compliance with our own relevant ethical requirements, like maintaining our independence, which is required in order to be your independent auditors. So in particular, these are the three different reports that we issued. I'm not gonna go through them unless you wish for me to, but I've highlighted some specific page numbers in the PDF of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. If you wish to look at those on your own or ask me any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer. Probably the most important thing is that page 22 is the Independent Auditor's Report, and we did have an unmodified opinion, which is the best that you can do. And then various other kind of highlights for your ease of navigation there. In terms of the single audit reporting package, if in the PDF version, there's page 11 has the schedule of findings and question costs. We're happy to report there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls that we noted. And then just as kind of part of the communication, what we do is we rotate different federal programs that we look at. And this past audit, what we looked at was the child nutrition cluster, which is really like your school lunch and school breakfast programs. And then what's called the Supporting Effective Instruction State Grants, which is utilized for teacher professional development. So those were the federal programs we looked at. And then in terms of, I know Ms. Berry said she was going to talk about the USFR, but just in terms of a high level, what this document is it's a document that's put out by the Office of the Auditor General, and it contains a series of, I don't know, call it a couple hundred questions that are geared to answer yes and no. And they cover a whole range of different areas, which I've listed for you on the screen. That's not an all-encompassing list, but it gives you an idea of the different types of things that we look at. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ms. Berry, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Schultz. All right, there's a couple things I would like to go over with you.
Lana, can I ask Jennifer a real quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
So I noticed you said the useful life of assets. How long ago was that?
That's the GASB statement?
Yeah, that part of it, the useful life, not the depreciation part of it, but looking at the current life of our assets and so forth.
Well, there was an audit standard that went into effect, gosh, probably like 15 years ago that required fixed assets to be brought on. But every year we take a look at what the district determines the useful lives of the assets are to determine whether they're reasonable or not. So for example, if you have a bus and you're depreciating it over 5 years, but really you keep your buses for longer than 5 years, that's the type of thing that we look at.
Well, let's say you're auditing a city. Do you indicate the age of their streets or their sewer system, or is that part of what you do?
Streets and infrastructure, streets and sewers actually qualify under infrastructure, so those have a little bit different approach. But yes, we would look at what the depreciation of those would be.
Does it kind of divulge their age so that cities can say, okay, we got a problem coming?
I think the theory is, yes, that's what that would do, but really with a municipality, their infrastructure maintenance programs would probably devise or highlight any expected problems more than what the auditors would do in looking at a useful life.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'd like to go over a couple things with you, and I'll make them brief. There is a document on there that is 4 pages, and it says Chandler Unified School District audit exceptions, and then details for the year ending June 30th, 2020. What we did was we took off all of the uniform system of financial records questions that were a no instead of a yes. In a sense, they're the findings that Jennifer and her team give us at the end of the audit. And I think that document is about 40 pages long. There's lots of questions on there, and that's what they spend during their field work. They're going through all those line items to confirm that we've met all those uniform system of financial records requirements. So there's a few, and always, typically, you're gonna have a couple of findings on there, and then how it's great in some ways because you can find ways to get better. You can improve your education system within of how to train somebody, or you can just improve the system and the process of what you're doing. So there's a couple of things, and I'm gonna keep them brief. Payroll, the very first one, there was one finding in payroll. They take a testing of a certain number of our payroll. They don't test all 5,000 employees, but they took 50 staff members, reviewed the transactions, found that one member was off by 64 cents on a transaction. And so that was a software issue. We round typically to 2 decimals, they're rounding to 3. So we now run a report before payroll to confirm that. And if there's any adjustments we need to make, we make it manually. So just related to decimals in that, but something for us to check and make sure that there is an exact amount. The next finding is on governing board management procedures. It's related to conflict of interest. One of the areas that they found was that for one employee that provided music camp services to the district, a conflict of interest form was not on file. So what happened is this employee was
this person was an employee of the district and ultimately then has a camp, provided services for a music camp through their own entity, and we didn't realize that. Unfortunately, that you'll find it on the next finding. It's the same one because we spent money with this vendor, that they were a vendor of ours first, and they have to check off a box saying they're not, there's not a conflict of interest. Well, then this vendor became an employee. So now what we're doing is we're working with the HR staff and the procurement staff to make sure if they were a vendor first, that when they become an employee, they understand those conflict of interest forms, and if they're an employee and they become a vendor, that the purchasing department knows that. We were running double checks on addresses, social security numbers, to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that was the end of, that was the finding for that, that vendor/employee. Procurement, this follows that same finding of the conflict of interest. Ultimately, the district did not follow the school district procurement rules for music camp services purchased from an employee business, which totaled $7,830. So we didn't bid that service out because we didn't know that there was a conflict of interest. You have to bid those services if they're an employee, even if it's $1. So we, again, have a way to check now with addresses, social security numbers, all of those pieces. We're running that. Our programmers have helped us, and we're working with the HR department, and we're working with the procurement department to make sure that both know if they're an employee existing and they then have a service, or if they were a vendor originally and then became an employee, that they understand those conflict of interest requirements. The next one is credit cards and P cards. And so they go through and review all of our credit cards and P cards. They found that we had a late statement of $4 on one of those credit card statements. That was during COVID. There was mail was not being opened as quickly as probably should have been, and we had a late statement on one of those findings. How we're fixing that in the future is now all the accounts payable clerks get the statement. They get a copy of the statement. So if a credit card is out at a department, in the past, they got the statement, turned it into us, and then we paid the bill. Now they still get the statement, but we also get a copy of it in accounts payable so that they can see it just in case they don't receive the statement from that department in time. They can pay that bill or get on that department a little bit sooner. It was just the delay during COVID. So we will make sure we have that in the future done. Student attendance reporting, there is a couple of findings, I believe 3 findings in the student attendance area. The first one, did the district appropriately track and report student memberships and absences? And there was, for 2 students reviewed for partial day attendances, the absences were reported incorrectly, resulting in a net overstatement of 0.25 absences. Now, absences don't count against us financially. They did years and years ago, but they don't anymore. And unfortunately, it's really hard to meet that compliance piece of the USFR, and partly because of how we report when a student's gone, and we consistently report that for our parents' sake, but it doesn't always meet the requirement of the USFR, and so then you get a finding on it. And I think we've had a finding almost each year because of when we report it. For example, if a high school student comes in after a dentist appointment, you're really supposed to, and they come in 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, they're supposed to be absent for the whole period. In Chandler, we make it to where if you're there for 30 minutes or half the period, you are present. If you're gone for more than half the period, you have missed that, and consistently we've done that across the board. So that way families know if they have or haven't been there. Unfortunately, that results in a finding. The second question that we had for students enrolled in a program with a CTED, which is our JTEDs, our Joint Technical Education Group, the same type of situation happened. For 6 of 7 JTED students reviewed for partial day attendance, the absences were reported incorrectly, resulting in net overstatement of 0.75. Very similar on the reporting, same situation as before. The next question is, did the district ensure the student's name and the student management system match the name on the legal document on file? And they reviewed for 1 of 45 students of withdrawals in our district that happened over the past fiscal year, and the district was unable to provide the student's birth certificate or other acceptable form of identification per district policy. So there's always more training and constant training of attendance clerks in this area. This student's legal name of the form of identification that they did give us didn't match what was put into Infinite Campus, which is our software system. And so that's just a clerical error. There was a typing discrepancy there. But one of the other things that happened is this student came in and withdrew a number of times, I think 3 times, over 39 days. And during that period of time, we kept asking for the birth certificate, and unfortunately, we're not given the birth certificate. And so there's no birth certificate to show when the audit comes in. And sometimes that happens if you can't receive the certificate from the individual. So just more training, constant training, review of each of those files, making sure, and we'll continue to do that with our staff. Information technology is another area. There's an area of the question, did the district enforce data security policies that require strong network passwords that align with credible industry standards, such as strong password requirements, screen locks, repeated failed sign-on attempt locks, and prohibited sharing of use of IDs and protocols? And you saw up on the board that we were reviewing food service. One of the areas is our food service point of sale. And what they determined with that is the food service point of sale system does not have repeated sign-on attempt lockout, so you can sign in multiple times and it doesn't lock you out. And so additionally, the food service point of sale requires only a 4-digit password. So we're changing that process to make it more secure, and our team is working on that with our software provider. The last one is accounting records, and did the district code transactions in accordance with the Uniform System of Financial Records chart of accounts? And so the district incorrectly coded $7,966 of insurance proceeds to an expenditure code rather than an object code 5300. And that was just a mistake related to the coding. We put it back towards the expense that was already purchased. We should have put it in as a revenue that went into that fund instead of back against an expense. So that was just an accounting issue with the individual who coded that when they put it in. But no damage, not like we lost the dollars or anything like that, just a coding to expense versus a revenue. And that's just a training piece on and a couple of our accountants that are in the building. And we'll continue to train. So we felt like it was a very healthy audit. These are definitely areas to help us get better at constantly. We feel like the opinion was what we were looking for in our financials. And so do you have any questions for myself or for Jennifer?
I just have a comment, but
Go ahead, Mr. Worth.
I guess I'm just so disappointed in my profession. These financial statements are unreadable to the average citizen. They're of no value to our parents because you can't pick up anything from them. I mean, it's 143 pages. My profession needs to do something about it, but I mentioned that to Jennifer and we had a little discussion on it, but it's unfortunate that parents cannot pick this up and really learn much from about our district. So, something the profession needs to look at.
Are there any other questions, comments? No, if you want to, then did you need to go on to the questionnaire?
Nope. Okay. The findings were actually just, they were kind of a summary of the questionnaire.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming this evening and running through this with us. I think I got a package sent to my home, or maybe it was from here. I'm not sure. But earlier in the year to review it, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Is that a requirement that goes directly to the board member?
There are certain things that should go to the board, and while many of the documents are addressed to the board, if they are sent like a traditional U.S. postal mail, they would come here to the district office and route through the mail system. But because of some of the COVID protocols that were in place in the last year, and because your district is very transparent and we are able to access emails, we did actually email to the board certain documents that were required, and in particular it was the letter to governance. Mm-hmm. So the one that went through all of the required communication. So that was sent directly to the board as well as to administration.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we go to issues for consideration for the 2022 political agenda for ASBA. Mrs. Berry.
All right. Madam President, members of the board. So the Arizona School Boards Association requests that each school district governing board review the current 2021 political agenda and reaffirm their top 5 priorities for the ASBA Legislative Committee to consider on June the 4th, 2021. Each district may submit 2 additional priorities for consideration. They will be the basis for discussion at the official delegate assembly on Saturday, September 11th, 2021. These proposals are due Friday, May 21st, 2021. Last year's recommendations from the Chandler Unified School District are attached as information. So attached, you'll see last year's top priorities. And what I have done in the form that you have in front of you is I actually took last year's from May 6th. We had the top 3 priorities, and then we had 2 additional items. I've included those on there, and then I've kind of just written some items for consideration, but really most of those items are really part of what we approved back in May of 2020. So I want to go over those with you and then talk to you kind of about where we're at with the legislative state right now. We're in the middle of it. So the top 3 from last year were revise the school finance formula. The first one was to provide a stable, dedicated revenue source, less reliant on the general fund or annual legislative appropriation, ensure the formula addresses the unique financial needs of schools serving students in poverty and in rural schools. Both of those things are definitely happening right now, as you all know. There has been a lot of things that are happening with the Enrollment Stability Grant, with ESSER, not necessarily because of the process from last year, but just because of the state of crisis with COVID. But I do want to say that right now, the Education Financer Group and other lobbyists have been working really hard with legislators and with the governor. And right now, we do think that there will be a possibility for us to get money for special education, which has been extremely important, and also for opportunity weight for those school districts and those schools that have high poverty. And so there are monies available. Most of that has came from the federal money that's going through the state through the governor's office. We are also looking for gap funding, which will help our school district because we receive so much less in funding per pupil based on the federal dollars that school districts who received less than the median amount would be able to receive a little bit more from state dollars that were received from the federal government. So we're working very hard on that. So that's still in need, but we have needs for the future that will continue in all of those areas. The second was provide adequate ongoing resources to ensure district equipment and facilities are maintained and complied with at least minimal school facility standards. We still need additional dollars. We continue to fight. We were a champion of fighting for new school construction. It was about to go away a handful of years ago, and our representatives here in Chandler stood up and fought for new school construction. Otherwise, it was almost to go away. They were going to change the invisible space, which would make it to where none of us would qualify for new construction. We've also fought for building renewal dollars and have been applying for those through Mr. Fletcher's department. We're continuing to fight for those dollars because our schools are getting older. As we approach almost 6 million square feet, we need money for building renewal. So we're going to continue to fight for those pieces to make sure that we can adequately fund our schools as they age. Number 3 is establish financial and academic transparency for all institutions that accept public funds. As you know, there's the classroom dollar report for districts. There's not one for charter schools, and private schools don't receive funding specifically from that, but only public schools, public district schools are required to report a lot of those pieces. So I'd like to see that transparency for all institutions. We had added 2 items last year that were important. Special education, as you know, special education hasn't been changed for years. I think Heinfeld and Meach was the one that did the study on the underfunding part of our underfunded portion of special education back in 2007. We do think there will be some money in there this year through the governor's dollars. We've been fighting for that, and we believe that part of the package will include a small fix, so an increase in Group B, slight increase of Group B funding, but a much needed increase in special education in a lot of areas. We'd like to see that and continue to fight for that. The last one is number 2 under additional items to consider was related to the voter approved bonds. And overrides, and just asking for a longer period of time for overrides in particular. We go after an override every 4 years in our district, so in case that we fail, we can go out in year 5. but it phases down after phase 5. And we would love to see that get exchanged and changed out to 10 years so that we wouldn't have to go out every 4 years. We could probably go out after every 8 or 9 years with it phasing out in year 10. So I'd love to see that change. That's just a burden on a lot of school districts constantly going out and asking. It's voter fatigue, and it's a lot of work. There's a number, I just put the items down here because inflation adjustment to district additional assistant has been a top priority. Couldn't get hit this year because we have so much going on down there at the legislature. But our capital funding for public district schools has not increased since, I think, the 80s. So we finally are getting fully funded because of Dr. Castille's work. If you remember that, she worked with the head of the Senate and the president of the Senate and the head of the House, and worked with the governor's office to get funding for district additional assistance restored across Arizona. And that was a big win for us. We're finally restored coming into next year. But now we'd like to see an inflation piece happen on that. So that's super important. And
that's really
start
capital,
to increase.
right?
Capital, yes. But that's really part of number 1. So back up on our number 1, it's still part of that. Funding special education, as you saw as the additional items, is still extremely important, underfunded. Our district has been in good hands in special education, but there are some districts that have extreme costs in special education, and it's very expensive, and it hasn't kept up. The funding level has not kept up with the expense side. Number 3, building renewal dollars, which we've already talked about, just continuing and maybe doing an allocation on that. We used to years ago. We received an allocation for building renewal dollars, but we don't receive that now. We have to apply for the grants. And there's some small districts that don't have the staff to do that and do it do it in a timely fashion. And so they're having to use other resources. And so just a funding allocation for that, especially as facilities age in Arizona. Again, changing our 10 years from 5 years to 10 years like we talked about. Supporting opportunity weight for schools. Dr. Castille has been down to talk to the governor a number of times to support opportunity weight. It doesn't really impact Chandler as much as it does other school districts across the state, and she's been a champion of always supporting every school across Arizona. And so we still want to support all the schools across Arizona and some of our schools that have a higher poverty weight. And then the last one, continue to support alternative forms of learning for adequate with adequate resources. And that is a virtual and a non-virtual. We're still going to have a number of students who choose a virtual environment. And I actually think the governor just signed House Bill 2862 this afternoon, which is providing for a distance learning option into next year. But there's definitely going to need to be some help in defining that and continuing that, because there are going to be children who decide that they want a distance learning type of environment, and we still need to be able to be funded for those students and not deducted a portion for that. So continual, guidance and updates in that area as Arizona moves forward.
Would that last one include how sometimes when a student goes to an online school for one class, they get a larger chunk than what really is the percentage of what that piece of education is?
Sure. So sometimes are you talking about, so if they go to like a Chandler High School for 5 periods and then they do an online for 6 periods? So we're fortunate when they go to 5 periods for us, we claim them as a full-time student because you only have to be available for 4. So we don't take that deduction. However, if the online is not our online and it's their online, then there is a bigger deduction. So that's hard. That's the co-concurrent enrollment issues that we have, and definitely has impacted us. This won't necessarily fix that, but it would give us an opportunity to have distance learning, for example, for our elementary school students who are in Elementary Connect, and they're still meeting with the teacher one-on-one all day long. We'd have an opportunity to get funded for those students.
Mrs. Berry, I should say. Number 3 at the bottom, that's incredibly unfair to poor districts, so there needs to be some sort of adjustment for that before I can support it.
Agree.
As a little district, we got $1,000. Well, okay, they can't fix anything, so.
Correct. There's been talk about changing the building renewal formula to where there's a grant piece still for those, and then a formula allocation. That would seem to meet the need, so that if you had a roof that blew off or was about to blow off, you could fix that roof even if you only have 1,000 students in your district.
That would work.
Great point.
One other thing I'd like to ask, I believe we brought this up last time, in relation to the bond and override suggestion, not only the length of the time period that it covers, but also maybe have they looked at any more this year? There are restrictions on the phrasing that can be very confusing for voters.
Yes, and actually, I apologize. That was majority of that too, was the wording. That has been an issue, and we did not fight that this year because of all the other pieces we were fighting for. We were going to try to run that and run that for Chandler specifically. We will work on that. Mr. Dellartino is our lobbyist, and he'll work on that for the future. Our biggest piece have been trying to go after gap funding and special education funding, some of the others, and so we try to pull all of our capital in that area. But definitely the wording on that is it's really hard when it says override instead of, a budget increase. There's other pieces that we'd love to change. Great suggestion.
Anyone else? Great.
So one of my suggestions is the wording, obviously, of the top 5. They're still in need. All 5 of those are still something that we need to continue for the future. So we're still on the right path. We didn't get to a lot of this because of COVID. We got to some areas, but there's a lot of still need in all 5 of those areas you've addressed in May of 2020.
So it sounds like we all have homework because I know we have to turn in our decisions on the 12th. Or after the meeting on the 12th. And so we will have this on our, an action item on our agenda. So if board members could go ahead and, unfortunately we have 2 sections of, I guess pretty much the items for consideration pretty much cover all of the things that were from last year. So if you could maybe send Lana a rank order of those, and she can tabulate that and come back to us. But if you can rank those 6 items at the bottom, and then we can kind of tabulate and figure out where we're going and have a discussion on this next time.
And we can definitely word those, make them appropriate too, and bring those back to you.
Okay. Are there any comments on any wording or, I think Mrs. Bruner, you were asking about some of the language with overrides and for the voter pamphlet and things included in that 10-year.
Yeah, not in the wording of what you did, but just to include a concept of the wording on bonds and overrides, yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you, Mrs. Berry. Appreciate all the preparation you put into this and the thought and meeting with your staff on preparing some suggestions for us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have our board agenda roadmap. Our next meeting is on the 12th and then of May. And then we will start running into graduations. So I think that if you do have any additional, board members, if you do have any additional graduations that you would like to attend, please get with Mrs. Nye ASAP. She might be able to get your name added to the schools and so that your name is printed in the program, because that's always something nice for both the parents and the students to have the appropriate people listed in the program. So I think that's probably it. We do have our retreat next week, and I believe Mrs. Nye will be sending out additional information to everyone on it. Dr. Castile, any comments for this evening?
I do, Madam President, members of the board. I have a few celebrations, and we've been trying to keep you updated, but they are coming in rather quickly. 2 of our students have earned the prestigious Flynn Foundation Scholarship. Arian Mather of Chandler High and Anaya Lakosha of Arizona College Prep are among only 20 students to receive this scholarship. They will receive full cost of tuition and mandatory fees plus housing and meals valued at $120,000 to any state university. This award includes international study abroad travel experiences. Congratulations to the Basha High School Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America. It's the FCCLA. I know you love acronyms as much as I do. All of the students in the program qualified as national contenders by placing first or second in the state. Categories include leadership, teach and train, entrepreneurship, focus on children, and chapter service project. Lily Jensen was awarded a $1,000 senior scholarship. A shout out to the sponsor, Melanie Alexander, for leadership with the team. The Arizona Thespians and Educational Theater Association announced this week that Castile and Perry earned Gold Honor Troop Awards. Castile, Perry, and Hamilton received Gold Performance Recognition, and Castile High earned Superior for going out of their way to train their students in leadership abilities, technical, and acting by virtual workshops. It's been a tough time for theater programs during the pandemic, but it certainly didn't slow our staff and students down here in Chandler, and we're very, very proud of them. Finally, Castile High became the first school in the district and one of only 3 statewide to be recognized by the Arizona School Counselors Association with a RAMP, that's all capital, RAMP designation, the highest accolade a school counseling program can earn. They are acknowledged for their commitment to use data to drive their program development and implementation so all students can achieve success. This designation is good for 5 years, and we're very, very proud of them as well. I know we've got your calendars full for the next few weeks, so stay tuned, and Donna will try to keep you on target. You got to open your email and read your text, Joel, so I'm sorry, I'm just teasing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Castile. Do we have any board member comments?
No.
Ms. Love?
Thank you. Just as Black Alliance president with the ASBA, I want to thank everybody who attended the ASBA Equity Conference. It was a really great set of presentations this year. Very courageous conversations about our Latinx populations and how we can support our students, our BIPOC students, in making them feel safe and affirmed. We had a really great speaker, Calvin Terrell, and he spoke about how boards could better serve the community by doing equity work and how backlash is a part of that. But not to give credence to fascism that comes through and tries to stop progress, because this is work that is worth doing. So I just want to say thank you. It's recorded, so you can go and watch it. You can watch the question and answer series that I did with Calvin Terrell. Fun event. See you next year for that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I did just want to acknowledge it was mentioned earlier, Teacher Appreciation Week that's coming up, and just wanted to thank the teachers especially this year, as they have been working way beyond the parameters of whatever would have been expected from educators. And just wanted to publicly thank them and tell them that the vast majority of parents and community members are, in full support of everything that they do, and there's nothing that can, fully show them how much we appreciate them. I know they get, gift cards, and my favorite thing is handwritten notes from students, and those things are so special, and yet they still don't come close to expressing how much teachers mean in the lives of children. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. Mrs. Bruner, I agree with you. I think this is one of the first, for some reason, I always seem to think that we have a board meeting the week of Teacher Appreciation Week, but this year we don't. So anyway, but thank you for, of course, showing your appreciation and our appreciation as a board for all of our teachers and also these support staff and administrators within this district, because it really does take the entire organization to support the educational process, and teachers are right on that front line with all those students, but behind them, supporting them, is also our administrators. But thank you so much. Teachers do touch the lives of the children that they teach, and for many of them, it is, I mean, I think when I think back, everybody seems to remember that one teacher in their life. And if you think back to your childhood or even high school or even college, there will always be a teacher that you remember that touched your life in some way, either through their personality or the way they taught or how they cared about you or whatever that personal connection was. And I think that's what helps make education successful. So thank you so much. We will see you on May 12th, and this meeting is adjourned.